Well,
My
if you
signature.
cut yourself, you can go up to the.
All right,
copy
do we
machine and
have
stick
Mike
your finger
joining
in
us
there
now?
and
No,
take
not
it
yet.
together.
Done. No, scrunched.
Scrunch it.
We were too quick in our
Yeah.
You see
moving
it?
through the agenda.
I saw that
Wow.
another week. I've seen it before.
Isn't that weird?
Oh,
Um,
yeah. it is.
Isn't that neat?
Would that be acceptable if we move
I like
public
paper
comments
clips.
ahead of,
This is good.
uh, we would likely need to amend the agenda to be able to do that, but we could move it around. No, all right. So while we are waiting for Mike to join us, I'm wondering if I could entertain this board to amend the agenda so that we can move public comment up in front of the legislative update, just for the sake of time
I'll
and,
move.
right? To amend the agenda.
Yeah, to amend the agenda to move public
All
comments.
right, so it has been moved by Commissioner Scott, supported by Commissioner Martin to agenda the amenda.
Yeah, that's what my motion was
To
for.
amend the agenda.
The agenda, the amenda.
Oh, I love it. And move public comment in front of the legislative update. Is there any discussion on that? All right, all those in favor say aye. Oh, we need a roll call on that? Yes. Okay, roll call.
Curran,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Hinkleman,
Yes.
Majerick,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Ballraff,
Yes.
Yarborough,
Yes.
Bell, Bell,
Yes.
Freeling.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 10 yeas.
All right, the agenda has been amended. So at this time, we will be opening it up for public comment. So if there's anyone here from the public that wishes to address the Board of Commission, please do so by going to the podium, stating your name, jurisdiction, and 2 minutes on your comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address us? Bob, are you public?
No, I'm not.
I know, after amending it and everything. Uh,
I haven't asked you. Well, 3 years.
Okay,
Bob knows everything.
no worries at all.
What's wrong with Matt?
His wife's mother died.
So, yeah, while that's kind of going around, there's a couple of cards for different Madam.
Madam Chair,
Matters.
I have a question for Commissioner Curran. While we're in limbo and waiting, how many miles is it from Niles to here? Like for your,
It depends on where you start.
like for your,
Started, I come from Benton Harbor. I looked on the map, it showed me how to get there, but the miles never came up.
I'm guessing right around 34, 35, Mike?
that
I
right?
mean,
Yeah, I do.
I live down by the state line,
Yeah,
Mike
mine's
lives-
32.
32, and I'm probably 34, 36, something like that. Yeah.
Mine's 25.
Okay.
there you go.
Just for the record, sometimes
Then you
when
have
you guys
double-
don't
you have
do that,
double
I MapQuest
Double
where
that
you're
because
going
you're
from your
going there
house,
and
and then
coming
I
back.
plug in mileage when you guys don't.
That's,
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
but if you didn't get around to it or whatever, I try to assist.
Mamie,
Okay,
from here
okay, perfect, thank
to
you.
the center of Niles is
At the
20,
Amtrak.
is 26 miles.
To the board, Thaddeus just stated that there was a connection issue. And so Mr. Crombie is joining us now, so we'll wait and give him a little bit of time to get connected, and then we'll receive that update.
is this a connection issue on his end or Bering County's end? Okay, because that's what, broadband is what we're dealing with, you know?
James, so you said how many miles?
From
34?
here to the center of Niles, it's 26 miles.
Okay, I go to Amtrak, that's what I needed this
Yeah.
for.
That's about right. The
Yeah.
Amtrak station is from here.
When I first get
So
there.
whatever your house is to here, you can just add up.
About 5 miles, 3 miles. That'll be good.
You can turn off your microphone.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I've been texting back and forth with Mike. He is in the car. He's had some connection issues with just cell coverage, so he is attempting to log into the Zoom now. I apologize for the delay in getting him up and running. While we're waiting for Mike, one thing that he's going to report on is that he's been reaching out to the newly elected both state and federal representatives that will cover Berrien County. We have Representative Andrews coming this afternoon to take a tour of the jail, and we'll present him with our capital projects list. Representative Andrews is serving in that newly created Lakeshore District. So he covers essentially from New Buffalo up towards Saugatuck along the Lakeshore. Mike is also working to secure time for the board with Congressman Huizenga. And we hope to have that session set up sometime in December or January. All right, I'm going to stop treading water. Mike is on with the group. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, sorry about that, guys. I'm actually on the road down to your neck of the woods, but had some connectivity issues.
All right, Mike. The board is in committee of the whole. They're ready to talk to you. So proceed when you're ready. Board members, Just remember to use your mics if you have a question for Mike Crombie.
Thank you, and good morning, Mike. This is Commissioner Freeling.
Good morning.
The floor is yours.
I figured I'll give you a brief update of where we're at in the lame duck session. The Senate was in on Tuesday. As of right now, both the House and Senate are planning on coming back next week. What it sounds like at this point is that everybody will come in on the 6th, that perhaps that will be a very long session day that will bleed over into the early hours of the 7th, and that will likely be the end of lame duck. There is some rumor about people coming back on December 13th, but assuming that we're just here on the 6th into the 7th, we will have had just 5 session days of votes in both the House and the Senate since July 1st. Obviously, some of that due to it being an election year, but lame duck was sort of believed prior to the election to be a time where we might see massive movement on a number of both policy issues and spending issues, given that the state is still sitting on $6+ billion of money that has yet to be allocated. However, because the Democrats took control going into next session of the House and the Senate and will retain the governor's mansion, there's not a lot of incentive for the Democrats to negotiate in a way where they would take a deal that they don't think they could get a better deal come January. So, particularly with spending, why would you negotiate and trade spending, funding priorities with legislative Republicans when next year you might be able to pass a budget with almost exclusively Democrats? So those are sort of the dynamics that are playing out. On Tuesday, there was thought to be some agreement between the Republican leaders and the Democratic governor on several bill priorities. The governor wants to move up the presidential primary date. The Senate Majority Leader had wanted this mental health package to go, and the Speaker of the House had wanted a health care bill to go as well. They put it on the board in the Senate, and all of the bills did not have the vote. So they had to wipe the board clean, but the votes failed. Kind of, I think, pushed the leaders away from the negotiating table. But then as of about 5 o'clock last night, staff for the Republican leaders and the governor's office were, back to phone calls and trying to negotiate what could happen in lame duck. So my gut here is that we're going to see very little get done as far as controversial items between now and the end of the year. Those 3 bills, I think, are still alive to some extent. Additionally, there have been pushes on a couple other bills. One of note for you all is the short-term rental bill. There's several different versions of that bill going around town. My understanding is that the governor has sort of indicated that she would be willing to sign something. And there is a version that Senator Ken Horn has that that sort of regulates short-term rentals. And it does not end local zoning. It does tell every community that they cannot ban short-term rentals in their entirety, but it would maintain zoning. But my understanding is that the realtors are not interested in that deal, that the Speaker of the House is not interested in that deal. And so while nothing is dead in lame duck, I would say that the chances of a short-term rental bill getting done between now and the end of the year are extremely slim. So, that's sort of the whirlwind we're dealing with right now. Folks are still negotiating ahead of Tuesday to come in. Outside of the legislative process, we're waiting for the Robin grant stuff to move forward here in early December. The maps are out at the state level related to rural broadband. And so, that challenging process will take place, but some good movement on those things. I believe the county is putting in for a couple of those Spark Parks grants as well. So there's some other things that are moving in Lansing that are not directly legislatively related, but certainly touch on the county as well. What questions can I answer from all of you?
So are there any questions for Mike from the board as it relates to the update that he has here? Anybody have any questions?
I will say that I am putting together a sort of a year-end wrap-up written report as well for the county. So that should be coming to Brian here shortly. Admittedly, some of it kind of depends on how long lame duck lasts. So if they're gone on the 7th, I should have it to you all next week. If they come over into the 13th, it might be the following week, but I will have a more detailed written report as well.
Okay, thank you, Mike. There is a question here from Commissioner Kern.
Yeah, Mike, can you give us an idea of the legislative priorities with the Democratic legislature now? What are their priorities?
Yes, and that'll be more spelled out in the written report. I've got several bullets, but we have seen the legislative leadership sort of highlight a number of items. We're going to see, Democratic priorities that have been stifled by Republicans, due to divided government, really have some legs. And so I know that there's likely to be a labor committee next year. We're likely to see things like, repealing right to work and the prevailing wage stuff, things that Republicans had done in the last decade, probably dialed back or attempted to be dialed back. We're going to see a number of things, I believe, on, gun laws, safe storage, red flags. We're likely going to see supplementals actually very early next year, again, with the $6+ billion on the table. I talked to Sarah Anthony, the incoming Senate Chair of Appropriations, and she's indicated that she'd like to get to spending those dollars with Democrats early next year, January, February. Rural broadband will still be on the list. I think there's going to be sort of a larger infrastructure committee looking at those things. Public transit. I'm doing this. Let me just pull up my list because I've got it here. They're gonna do some of the social stuff that may not directly impact things, but I think are symbolic for them. So, for example, Proposal 3 passed regarding reproductive rights. My guess is they will still repeal that 1931 abortion ban law just to get it off the books. They're likely to do some sort of an Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act bill surrounding discrimination of people based on, sexual identity, sexual preference. So I think, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but if you kind of went through the list of issues that you think are, staunchly big D Democratic versus Republican, more of those wish list items that every Democrat would generally support, those are the things we're going to see very early in the session next year. Tax policy will be another one. They want to do the earned income tax credit, repeal the pension tax, and probably look at, corporate business structures, LLCs, those types of things.
Thank you, Mike. I have a question from Commissioner Yarbrough. And then another one from Commissioner Kern.
Thank you very much. Good morning. What I would like, excuse me, what I would like to ask you, do you know anything about the education? They're in a hurry to get some signature from Benton Harbor area schools, an agreement. I heard it and saw a little bit of it in the newspaper. They earlier said that there was not enough money given in a number of schools to be able to do what was needed. Is there something going on right now before January 1?
So on the education policy stuff, there's a couple things that are out there. The Department of Education came out with their underperforming schools list statewide. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I think there were like 171 schools that were deemed to be underperforming. That triggers a number of things for different schools. It would not surprise me if Democrats try to roll back some of those things next year. Additionally, they'll probably take a look at some of the charter school regulations. The tough piece about funding is that we have had record per pupil funding, every year for the last 4. And certainly I think you'll continue to see investment there with the budget. I think the problem becomes, what is sustainable with ongoing revenues if we are heading towards a recession, right? And so the state's sitting on that $6 billion, but it's one-time dollars. And so if you use that money to bolster up ongoing programmatic spending, then you're sort of setting yourself up for a cliff. I did talk to an incoming senator yesterday who had interest in using that for maybe some grants related to teacher retention, one-time costs, busing, smaller class sizes, different things like that. So I think all of that's on the table. As far as things that need to be done ahead of the end of the year, I'm not expecting, major breakthroughs between now and the end of lame duck on that. But I do think that those education issues are likely going to be, right out of the gate come January. And Democrats will have the gavel and, do some things that I think that they've wanted to do for a while, but could never get Republicans on board with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kern.
Thank you. Do you know right offhand what the surplus is for this year's budget? How much money's left over?
So, yes-ish. So we do these things called the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference. That determines the level of funding that we have on the ledger. Based on the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference that we last did in May, we have roughly $6 billion, about $3 billion in general fund dollars, about $3 billion in school aid dollars, and then about $1 billion in federal ARPA dollars that are still left unallocated. That being said, the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference in May basically said you should consider all this money one time because we're going to head towards a recession and state tax revenues are not going to be at the level that they had been prior to May. And so, what that looks like is that this money that you haven't spent isn't going to repeat. It's going to be one time. The next Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference is in January, but the state revenues for taxes have continued to outpace those expectations set in May. What I think we're going to see in January is the exact same storyline, which is, hey, these revenues came in at higher than expected. So you have them, but we're probably headed towards a recession. So consider these dollars to be one time. So that's probably another $2 billion of money that the Revenue Estimating Conference won't believe is sustainable. So it'll look like it's one-time money on the ledger. My guess is we're north of $8 billion after they do the Revenue Estimating Conference in January. But we'll get official numbers. They haven't set a date yet, but it'll be probably the third week of January. We'll actually have, these are the numbers that the state believes are, the actual numbers that you can budget off of. I think it'll be north of 8.
Right, thank you. There's another question here from Commissioner Scott.
I want to get back to the education. I've got a question. Maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. You said there was 171 underperforming schools. Is that correct? Or is that school districts? Or was it just schools?
let me pull it up here real quick, because I've got this.
So is it, if it's individual schools, I guess then it's really not a question, it's a comment. But no matter who's in charge, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, we should be really looking at that as a priority item. Right now, we're the 12th highest salaries paid in the nation for teachers, but we're 43rd out of 50 in actual students and their education. And I guess that whether you're Democrat or Republican, it should matter to all of us that our children are educated and well educated. And I'm just wondering if how that's going to be taken by the legislature. Shouldn't have any political stuff going to it.
Yeah, I just pulled up the exact number. So I was off on my 171. It's 112 low performing public schools in 54 districts around the state. So that's the official number out of MDE. 5 are in the Benton Harbor area schools. So I don't have the full list in front of me, but certainly down in your region, you have at least that. It would not surprise me if there's other districts. I don't mean to simply call out that one, other than the article I have in front of me specifically mentions it. So I figured I'd highlight it. I think you're right. And honestly, coming out of COVID, there's been a lot of talk and they just haven't spent the money. They did some of this in the budget, but with $6 billion on the ledger, I think you're going to get more of it is sort of how do we get students back up to speed? There's been a lot of talk about students that are behind where they should be given the impact of the pandemic. And so a number of ideas have been put out there, more support staff, more tutors, more, reading specialists, more, math specialists, more intensive sort of one-on-one. How do we get kids back to where they should be after they were, a year and a half on Zoom, where, for some kids, maybe they could handle that fine, but for others, it was a real barrier to their education. So I think some of it's that. I just think that circumstances beyond anyone's control, the pandemic was what it was, and folks are going to try to tackle that side of it. The other side of it really is the sort of long-term outcomes, and there's a lot of ways to look at it. And so I would say that, one of the things that often gets highlighted in news articles is proficiency, right? Students are either proficient at grade level or they are not in whichever subject we tested them at for whichever grade they're in. The other metric to look at is your growth level. And so you may have a student in 5th grade who entered that year with a 1st grade reading level. And maybe he exits 5th grade at a 4th grade reading level. Now, he's still not proficient, but he gained 3 grade levels in a year. And so I think there's going to have to be a lot of conversation about, yes, we've got to do more. We've got to get everybody to this, sort of attainment level, and we've got to have quality education and quality outcomes. But are we making progress on that? Our students who are behind, are they catching up? Because it may not happen overnight. And so I think you're going to see a lot of conversation. Democrats will have the gavel, so it will be, them sort of leading that policy discussion. But I think they're going to take a look and put together some proposals in January, some of which maybe Republicans can get on board with, others they may not. But I would expect several education reforms early next year in K-12 education, and several, spending items of those one-time dollars, of which there's, $3 billion today in the school aid fund, specifically around educational supports and what Democrats believe will close that gap on performance.
Thank you. I have a question here from Commissioner Harrison.
Good morning, Mike. Bob Harrison here. I question about, I suppose, worker training, CTE in the K-12 districts, the Michigan Works system, and community college support. Is there any sense that there'll be additional focus on talent development for using those three different avenues, specific to, skilled trades as well as manufacturing and the like.
Yeah, I actually had an hour-long meeting with Jonathan Smith, the chief of staff for the director at LEO, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, yesterday. And we talked about a number of items, but I'm really encouraged by what I heard from them. And I think they're going to be a little more aggressive because Democrats control everything. I think, they can push their agenda a little bit more without having to sort of let the Republican legislature, drive the boat a little bit. A couple of things that we're likely to see. There was a reconnect bill that is likely dead in lame duck that would make some changes to that program. So reconnect is a program that allows individuals who have not attained a degree, who are 25 years or older, to have tuition-free community college at any of the state's public institutions. The legislature will likely reintroduce a slightly different version of that bill next year. They would like to stretch that age gap down to 21 from 25. And I think, make some other changes on it, best practice type things. They're trying to push the community college entities as a whole to do a number of things, CLEP exams, credit for prior learning, all of these other things, of which many of our community colleges do. In fact, I would say most of our community colleges do, but really just try to get to 100% of folks doing it. And they're also trying to connect that to the workforce side, right? And so ultimately, Leo's grand vision, and this isn't something that'll be done next year, but if it's multiple funding sources, if it's different programs, they want it seamless from the user side. So no matter what age you are, if you're looking to go get trained, if you're going to get an associate's degree, you're going to get a benefit. And maybe one scholarship for 20-year-olds is called this. And if you're 25, it's called this, but it's the same thing. And if you're looking to get skilled up, it's there. The other thing that they're very interested in, and they're trying to do their due diligence on, is credentials. And what I got from them was, we believe in these credentials. We want industry recognized credentials that are portable, that lead to good pipelines, good jobs, that are sustainable. They're very nervous about bad actors in the provider community. And so I think, they've got interest in setting aside, scholarships or grants to fund credential programs for individuals that are seeking to get trained in, specific things, whether that's, manufacturing or healthcare or truck driver. But I think they want to be very cautious about, who's performing these credentials, and do the credentials actually lead to better outcomes? Or does some fly-by-night company say, hey, we're going to put you through this 8-week credential program and you get this certificate, but no employer cares about that certificate. Nobody wants to hire you. It doesn't actually improve your outcome. So their office of 60 by 30 is trying to work on, I think, what that framework would look like. But yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of investment into those types of programs. The other thing I remind people is, Reconnect got passed. The governor, when she first got elected, proposed 2 scholarships, My Opportunity, and the My Opportunity was for kids right out of high school. So, I don't know if they take another run at that or not, but I think you're going to see a lot of conversation about, what is this pathway to sort of low cost, attainable education for what they believe is, upward mobility. So yeah, I think it's going to be an emphasis area for them. And I know the Reconnect bill will be reintroduced in a similar and maybe, more advantageous form for community colleges in January.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mike from the board? All right, hearing none. Mike, I want to thank you for your time, for that update. I know that we'll be looking forward to that end of the year wrap up that you'll be sending to us here in a couple of weeks, just kind of highlighting some of the work that you all have been doing, and those successes and what we're looking forward to in the coming year.
Hey, thanks
I
for
hope you
having
had a
me.
good-
And if anybody's got,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, thanks for having me. And if other questions come up, you know how to get a hold of me, and Brian's got me on speed dial. So, don't feel like you gotta wait. Just, if there's another question that comes up, just get it to me and I'll find out.
Will do. We hope you have safe travels and we'll keep working on improving that connectivity for you within our area.
Sounds good.
Great. Have a good day. All right. Well, we've come to the part in our agenda of other business. I don't know if there's any other business from any of the board members here.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
just real quickly, I wanted to highlight an article in today's Herald Palladium for the other board's attention.
Great. I'm glad that you were going to do that. I was going to move forward on that too. So carry on.
To the board members, if you can see the screen, this is from today's Herald Palladium, and it just notes the successful completion of the Napier Avenue Bridge rebuild project. Total price on this was 2.4 million. All lanes are now back open, and vehicle access has been 100% restored. So there's some good news there. And I'll be following up with our team just to offer my compliments on getting the project completed.
Absolutely. That's great. Glad to see that and appreciate it being highlighted there in the paper so that the public is aware of the completion of that.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
It also should be noted also that Walton Road Bridge is completed and it's
It is.
open also.
It is. I know that I have seen our road department completing a number of their projects and wrapping those up for the season before we get another snowstorm.
And just as a point of order, we are still on the mainframe.
Still on the mainframe. Yes, thank you. One other item for housekeeping for us. I know that a couple of weeks ago, the chair had discussed about getting together for the board and our spouses or our significant others. December 15th is the date that we've landed on. 6 p.m. is the time at River St. Joe. And so I would ask if you guys would look at your calendar and get me a head count. Preferably maybe before we leave the building today, but you can certainly reach out to me via email. So, and that is extended to Thaddeus, to Brian, and to Sharon. If you would like to join us that day, we would welcome it.
December 15th.
December 15th, 6 p.m. River St. Joe, which is in Buchanan, on Walton Road. So you can use the bridge. What a great segue. Yes, Commissioner Scott.
Two here.
Understood. Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, we stand adjourned and ask you